Hello friends and welcome. Today I'm going to share the story of how we transformed this den from a collection of furniture from our high school and college days into this cohesive example of design and function. It all began on Pinterest. My wife and I decided to use that as our primary tool to come up with some good ideas for this space. We knew that we wanted our den, or family room you might call it. Den is just what we landed on. We wanted our den to be the primary entertaining space for, let's say, digital entertainment. It's our one room that has a TV. We wanted an open space here for kids to play and have fun and have toys all around. And we wanted a great big piece of furniture to seat a lot of people. It can seat 6 or so big adults like me nice and comfortably. It's at this L-shaped corner sectional, so it's good for conversation. It really is wonderful. Like I said, it all started on Pinterest, and we looked through designs and colors, and we ultimately ended on a couch that was a 5-piece corner sectional with this diagonal here. And we knew that we wanted the couch to be our hero piece when we were designing this room. Hero piece is a term that we're using. We've heard that before on other design shows. My wife and I like to watch things like Project Runway, and they'll use that term for something on an outfit that they then design the rest of the outfit around. So this couch is our hero piece because it's the one thing that we bought, and then I built everything and designed it aesthetically around how this couch looks. Like, for example, this C table, which admittedly is a little tight to the floor, but this is the last thing that I built for this entire process, and I didn't get any footage of it while I was doing it except for some pictures. The function is perfect. You've got a big end table on either end, and you want somewhere to put your drink in the middle. You've got this tiny little C table. The design was inspired by a piece of lumber that I had. It was already 5/4 thick, and it was about 9.5 inches wide, so there was no need to do anything different with that. The joinery is an allusion to the end tables as well as the den shelving, and it really is lovely. When it's not in use here, it fits perfectly behind one of the other tables. And so long as there isn't a foot in the way, all you have to do is bring it up and slide, and you're good to go. So that's kind of a good example of how this entire process went. We came up with one thing. These are the set of rules for how we wanted things to look and function, and every time we needed something in the space, we kept those in mind and built it. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about the couch and the design aspects of what we were going for. And then we're going to go through the actual build and philosophy for some shelving and some end tables, and then at the end I've got some bonus footage of a different project that I made from some scrap material. I hope you'll stick around. There's timestamps in the description below if you just want to jump around for one particular item, that's fine. Let's begin with the den shelving. Alright, here we are, and we are starting the shelving now. As you can see, we've got things taped out. That was our project yesterday as we kick-started this. I wanted to give you some insight into how we came to this point. We did a lot of looking on Pinterest and other design spaces to see what we wanted in this particular room. Originally, my thought was to build a big built-in cabinet, something that filled up almost this entire space and went up to the top and actually sat on the ground. Great big sucker. We were about ready to get going on it, and then we started looking at other things. That turned into the idea of maybe doing some floating shelving, but a lot of the floating shelves we saw were thick and made out of dimensional lumber, and that wasn't going to fit our needs. Then we found pictures of royal shelving, so that has some vertical support pieces and then horizontal actual boards that go across it. And that was getting closer, but a lot of those pictures, the vertical supports were metal, and that's not what I wanted in the space. So we came to an interesting compromise. It's going to be made entirely out of solid oak, just 1x oak. I'll be having a cleat system in the back, so wherever you see this tape, it's going to be cleated. Kind of looks like this. If this is the a 1.5 inch cleat. It'll have a dado running down the middle, and then the shelving is going to be backed into it like this. And it should hold really well. The cleating is going to be screwed into studs. So the studs will bear the weight because, you know, that's anchored in the wall in wood. And then the shelving is going to be glued into the cleats and probably screwed on the back end as well. So it's a lot of strength. Not that we're putting anything on here that's quite heavy, except for the TV, that's moderately heavy, but the items with the most weight, it's actually the wood itself because it's solid oak. You could have gone with a whole bunch of different materials, of course, but I didn't want a composite material. I didn't want anything that was plastic. Just didn't fit the needs, the feel that I wanted in this room, that Bridget and I wanted in this room. So, as you can see, we opted for kind of a modern perspective here. This, to me, reminds me of a Mondrian painting with all those intersecting 90-degree angle, vertical and horizontal lines. We saw a picture similar to this on Pinterest, and then we made all of the angles work with, or the sizing rather, work with our space. We had to take into account where the electric already is. We've got a hot air, or an air duct down there. We also wanted to play with existing lines. Over here, for example, where the window is, there's a shelf at 24 inches from the ground. So we extended that line all the way across here. And then this is at 30 inches from the ground. The TV is 24 inches tall, so that puts the center of the TV at 42 inches off the ground, which was the recommended viewing height for the size television that we have. We took all those things into account, and that's what gave us this design here. Oh, there's also 2 inches of space between the trim and where this first board's going to be, to include the negative space here, and to make sure I'm not butting up wood against wood in case things aren't exactly plumb. We also made sure that we left room for a bigger TV, a couple different sizes. We've heard from a lot of people that when they have a built-in, they almost immediately regret it because they see their TV in that space and realize, oh, we could have a bigger TV. And as the technology gets better and things become less expensive, there's a very good chance our television will increase in size in the future, and we have allotted space for that. So that's the design process and a little bit of history on it. Now let's build it. All right, one wall is done, at least with the test cleats, that is. And I was thinking of something when I was doing these cleats, and that is, it's important to give credit where credit is due. The idea for this cleat system actually came from a friend and old college roommate of mine. His name is Benjamin Kratchmer. He was actually one of my groomsmen as well. He owns a company called the Perseverance Works. They make fine heirloom quality furniture and art. He also does antique furniture restoration. Really cool business. And his father owns a company called Kratchmer Cabinets. So if you are in need of something like this, but you don't have the wherewithal or the time to do it yourself, I highly recommend checking out either of their companies. I'll have links in the description below. But Benjamin gave me his time for free for consultation, and it was his recommendations that led me to doing a cleat system, finding the studs, properly, getting these long screws in there, doing this 1/4 inch or so deep dado, I'll eventually be gluing the shelves in, etc., etc., etc. I had a good idea of what to do, but Benjamin expanded upon that, which improved the overall safety. So I just appreciate these collaborative opportunities for consultation. It's going to make this project better in the end. I learned something out of it. So, lesson learned. If you've got a good idea, talk about it with somebody else and you'll probably become a better idea. So remember to check out those two businesses. And now I've got another 17 of these to do. So back to the workshop. Ta-da! All finished. Here we are, several weeks after the beginning. The month of November for us was pretty busy. We had a lot of things happen, a couple deaths in the family, and you get busy this time of year. I'm really pleased at how this turned out. This color that we chose here is Minwax Golden Pecan, and it blends in really nicely with the light blonde color of our oak hardwood floors. And the light wood is a great contrast to the dark blue background. We love the different sizes of the shelves that we have here. This is my favorite one, this tiny little shelf. The negative space here above, you know, whatever we're putting on here will be really lovely. Really, everything is just good. Some features that I'll probably show you some pictures of as I talk over. In the very back corner here, I cut a little shelf. TV's going to stand on here, and then the cords can all hide underneath here. And I've got a corresponding hole right down here that I cut because our outlet is hidden behind this. So we'll have one cord going up through that hole with a power strip that goes into this, and this is where, let's say, the DVD player or other tech pieces are going to live. And then, you know, the cords for the TV will just feed down underneath there. And now's the fun part. We get to decorate, you know, put a nice potted plant that has something draping going down here that can feed off the natural light, and some tall things, tall books, who knows what else. It's really a wonderful prospect. I learned a great deal when I was doing this, such as plaster is nearly impossible to detect a stud through because the plaster is so thick from years of new plaster adding onto it. It was really difficult to find my studs. Fortunately, this whole thing, you know, being glued together, it's one entity. And that whole row over there is in studs. This is a row of stud. This is a row of stud. So it's on the wall. This is very much overbuilt because, I mean, the kids will ultimately climb on it no matter what, eventually, but I feel very confident that this is not going to fall. And it will naturally warp and shift with the house. So it's all good there. With the plaster, I learned that it's kind of like a wave. So these cleats here are perfect. They're a nice 3/8 inch deep wedge that fit the shelves into it just nice and tight. And I glued and I screwed the shelves into it. So these are nice and they sit perpendicular to the wall, but the wall isn't straight like this. It was wavy. So this one turns out it goes out kind of like this to exaggerate. Yeah, you can see in the camera, kind of goes out like this. And this one here goes straight out. So these boards have to be longer in the front than they were in the back, and I didn't realize it going into it after I made my cuts. So, and you can't tell when you're sitting down, it's just a nice detail touch. I ended up making wedges, and you saw me wedging those, you know, hammering them in after being glued. And when you come over that with stain, it blends right in. It really is an attractive touch, I think. Something that adds to the character of something that was handmade by yourself. This is a huge moment for me, having finally come to a point where I'm building large, showy pieces of furniture for our house. I'll always be able to have people come in here and entertain, and it's very much a conversation piece. So it's a moment of pride. I feel glad that it was built well. Glad that we ultimately went with the 10-inch wide boards. I was about to go with 8-inch, but Bridget convinced me to go a little bit wider. Glad we did. And this has inspired me with confidence that I can do bigger builds, so tables and other things, or maybe another bookshelf for the front in the future, or who knows what else. But it was a daunting project, but like so many daunting projects, you just start with one thing and then you chip away and you can do anything. Like I started over here, and then I built this chunk, and then this board, and then these, and it was ching 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 till you got and completed everything. And I'm just rambling at this point, so we need to move on. Well, these shelves have really fit our needs perfectly. We've changed out the decorations several times now as the seasons have come and gone. I really like adding flowers and bits of nature, especially when it's nice and cold and wintry outside, to add some life into the space. We love having things to fill that go all the way up to the ceiling. It's really just a perfect space for our needs. And the TV that you can see behind me, you know, I've got a lot of space here to expand. So I'm sure when the time is right, we'll get something bigger to fit this space, and we've got room to grow because we planned for it. Yay! Up next, we're going to be talking about the big end tables. Here we have the project that hands down makes me feel confident tackling any kind of furniture build. It's very exciting. It's just a table. In essence, it's real basic. I made a slab and I made some cuts and I assembled it. But I think it looks beautiful, and it is so sturdy, and it is custom to the space. This was something that my wife and I each independently pinned, and as we were going through our Pinterest board, we were looking at tables and we said, we both pinned this, and we just got the conversation rolling, and we knew it was the right one for us. These essential clean lines here mimic the clean 90-degree lines on the couch. They also go perfectly with the shelving that we just saw, again, that Mondrian and styled vertical and horizontal 90-degree, no frills. I wouldn't call it mid-century modern in particular. I just think it's an interesting modern design. This is a great lesson in joining boards and pressing my own lumber to make it thicker. And I had fun experimenting with certain kinds of lacquer on the top that's really, really thick because it's going to get water damage and kids are going to bang on it and everything else. Great learning experience. Let's dive into the build. Dottie, what are we doing today? Are you my foreman? You're helping me find the right wood? So for this table, no, yes you are. We've got 10 1x4s and 3 1x2s, and that's going to become one beautiful table. Charlotte, can you point to the wood? Tap the wood. Knock knock. Good girl. And there we go. So, my thoughts going into this are that it's going to be a pretty straightforward project, just kind of putsy. It's not an overly difficult concept. Essentially, the table is a big open C with a support down the middle. I'm going to keep the 6-foot length measurement and then just make a couple cuts so the top and the bottom are even, and then the height is what's left. So 2 45-degree cuts once everything is glued together. So now I just have to glue them and wait. I'm going to be cautious when I'm gluing to make sure that I've got even pressure throughout and even glue throughout, and I'm using my cauls wisely, spaced, appropriately up and down the length of the boards to make sure they line up as flush as possible. So I'll do that for 5 boards, then I'll glue the next 5, and then I'll kind of wedge those 2 together like this. And that's how we'll get started once we take off all of this plastic. Lovely. Terrific. So now I'm done gluing up my big main panels for the top, back, and bottom of the table. And there, like I said before, if it's a letter C, I have a panel that goes, let's say, 1/3 of the way from the front as just an extra support. And I want it to be the thickness of 2 standard 1x material, so I splurged and I got a pre-finished 2x. So it's what is it? 2x4x6. I opted to do this because when all is said and done, you're not going to be able to tell looking at the edge that this is laminated together, so to speak, because I'm going to have the trim on the edge of it. Whereas I won't have any trim on this center support piece, so I want the end grain here to just look perfect and not like it's 2 pieces that have been glued together. So this is a really simple glue up. I'm just going to cut this into 3 2-foot sections and glue them up side by side and make another panel just like that. So I was scouring around my workshop and I came across this. It is an electric hand planer, and it was still in the box. I had gotten it for maybe a holiday or birthday 4 or 5 years ago, and I think at that time I was intending to use it on like a cedar blanket chest, something that had a large panel that needed leveling. Yeah, see the application? It's perfect. I just haven't done a project like that since I thought I was going to do one several years ago. But now that I have, you know, a 5-board width that needs adjusting, this is perfect. This adjusts between 0 and 5/64 of an inch, so you can really dial in the precision. I'll take down the high points on this board and this board behind my shoulder and then glue them together. I already tried this out on one of the slabs and it worked beautifully. All right, that is as many clamps as I have access to. You can see I've got some cauls going transversely across. That distributes some pressure evenly across the center of the boards. Really just kind of helps in the end. That's the best I can do without having a giant steel press, you know, to get this taken care of. And the end result will be wonderful. So now we wait. Well, change of plans. I didn't like how my circular saw was cutting, so I'm borrowing my father-in-law's track saw, and that's what we're going to use instead for perfect, reliable 90-degree cuts. All right, so I've got the side pieces here all taken care of. They are glued on nicely. Now I cut my end caps just a little bit longer than need be, and I'm going to just slowly make a little bit of a rabbet here so this fits into this space. We're going to finesse every one of them individually, and that will help with any sort of errors that have accumulated up to this point. And here, after a little bit of effort, you can see how nicely this fits in. It's a nice snug fit. Should be able to take my hands away. That's just enough friction on either end. A good glue up here will fix a little bit of bowing in this particular piece. And yeah, and once we get this end and the other end done, then we can finally do the final leveling and sanding of this great big slab. Whew. And now for my least favorite part of any woodworking project, the sanding. We'll begin with the belt sander, transition to the orbital disc sander, work our way from 60 grit to 120, fill in any imperfections with wood putty. Once that dries, we'll finish with 220 grit, and when all is said and done, it'll look and feel beautiful. Alright guys, this next part is both thrilling and completely nerve-wracking. This is the part where I cut this giant slab that I have spent several days perfecting, a couple hours here and there. And once you make a cut, there is no going back. This is the second slab I've done. With the first one, I discovered that I had to modify my initial plans. I'm not going to be joining these at a 45-degree angle in the corners, essentially making a seamless wrap. Instead, I'm going to make it kind of a rabbit cut, where the vertical piece will be like this, and the top and the bottom will slide in like this. Very similar to how it looks on the edges. Well, there is the whole main body all glued up. Very satisfying to be at this point. A couple things since the last shot. We see here are the more narrow 2x materials that we had cut and planed earlier that we actually could plane on the planer because they were only 10.5 inches wide. I cut those to size by ultimately taking the inner dimension here of the base and making that the same here. Clamping is nice because it kind of fixes, again, any sort of imperfections. You really just pull it tight and glue it, and it's going to do very well. This is the underside where I'm facing now. So while this is gluing up, and I'll let this sit for the next 12 hours, I'll let it sit overnight, I'm going to create a base for it. The easiest thing, I've got some scrap 2x lumber that I had used for the outside edging here. And I'm going to just make a rectangle on the bottom. The reveal here from the inside edge to the outside edge of this little inner piece is about 4¼ inches. So I'm going to make the rectangle 4¼ inches in all the way around. And it will have the same kind of joinery here, although the joinery is inconsequential on the bottom because, I mean, it's going to be glued to the base and it's going to have gravity holding it down, and then I'm going to put felt on the bottom of it, blah blah blah, but it'll be consistent. So speaking of consistency, I'm kind of happy that my setup didn't allow me to make these a 45, these corners here 45-degree angle joints, because it would have been a different kind of joint than that. So now I have consistency with my joints for the entire project. That's nice. Well, friends, here is the final product before the finish and stain. I've got the felt all taken care of. The base has been attached. The whole thing is just about 20 inches tall when all is said and done, about 26.5 long, and this is about 19 or 19.5 wide. It's a really nice size for our needs. All that I have left to do now is apply stain, and I'm using this golden pecan stain. It's the same that we used on the shelving project in the den. And then I apply 5 coats to the top, at least, of this poly acrylic protective finish. This is a clear gloss. I think it looks the best, and I opted for a polyacrylic because I can really, especially the top, make it a nice thick layer that can stand up to a beating. Because little kids and furniture, right? There's going to be water damage like spilled on top and things banging on it eventually, and I know that this will hold up well. So the footage is really straightforward for the build. It's just putting on stain, waiting 3 hours, putting on finish, waiting 2 hours, then another coat, 2 hours, etc. And then doing the decorating. Well, if you stuck around this long, good for you, and thank you. Here's some bonus footage. I ended up making this baby gate from some leftover material from the den shelving project. It's the same oak, it's the same finish, and we were incorporating that design element of nice straight vertical and horizontal lines. I ended up making everything from wood, including the hinges and the latching system, which I can zoom in on. Didn't get any video footage of it, so that's why I wanted to show you here. But it does swing wonderfully, and it latches with a hinge and a pin system for locking. And that's nice and sturdy. And since we have to look at this for the better part of the next decade with other kids hopefully on the way, it pays to have something nice and artistic as opposed to a cheap piece of plastic or metal product that I just didn't want. So this was a nice bonus, not just for you to watch, but for our family to enjoy. And hey, look at that! We're right back where we started. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of video that I'm doing, that's a long-form narrative mixing elements of design and explaining of the process with actual build itself, encompassing multiple projects in one video, be sure to subscribe and like this video, leave a comment letting me know down below, and you can check out my most recent video in this card right over here. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day, and until next time, bye!